I guess we're not doing it.
Nah, don't even worry about it.
Okay. There's always like a little second delay before viewers pop up. I always wait. Okay.
Boom. Oh, look at that. You got that on the front end there.
Okay.
Welcome to number 71, I believe, of From the Ground Up. As you know, that's never an exact number, but thank you guys so much for
counting.
being here. Yeah. I think Owen was 69, so he got that pleasure. What do we have to talk about?
We got a new snake yesterday.
Oh, that was me pushing for you to do, the intro stuff.
What?
Yeah, you can talk about that.
Okay. Yesterday we got a new albino Cali King. So if you guys have been listening to our podcast, you know we've been trying to like dip our toes more in the king snakes. I really like the king snakes, especially Cali Kings, and so we got a pretty one.
And to be honest, I wasn't going to say that on YouTube because I was going to put out a YouTube video on it. So if you don't know, now you know.
You can still make a YouTube video about it.
Yeah, I still will. But I mean, whatever, man.
Sorry.
I meant for you to talk about the T-shirts and the stuff that we usually say in the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Not giving out the secrets.
Oh, our secret project, you know.
Albino Cal Kings, never seen before.
Because we totally didn't post it on Instagram today, you know. Okay, well, thank you guys for tuning in to our podcast. If you want to support us in the future, we always have t-shirts for sale on our website, Theportcitypythons.com. My favorite, the Reptiles, that looks like Rugrats t-shirt, is still up there, and I think it's a great shirt. We get a lot of questions about babies. We literally should have babies hatching in 2 days. And as soon as we are ready...
That's kind of because that's 55 days. It'll probably be 60.
It's a guesstimation, but we're hoping in 2 days.
And then give it like a month.
Shut up! I'm doing it. 2 days. Hopefully, we'll have babies.
It's the last time I let you do this.
Okay, well, shut up. And then, fuck, you made me lose my train of thought. As soon as we are ready to send those out, meaning like we got them feeding, like they're not crazy or dying or anything.
What the fuck are you? You're just.
Then we will post them on the website.
Why would anyone ever buy a snake from someone?
Snakes die. Shit happens. They know that.
Oh my god, guys.
Okay, snakes don't. Okay, as long as we got them feeding and we are happy and ready to sell them, we will post them on our website, and we will also let you guys know when they post them on our website so you guys can buy them.
I'm also going to be posting up the Miami and going to be taking the list for those, the official list. So if you're in the chat, you get a jump on it.
Miami
if you're listening
babies.
to the podcast, Miami Okatee babies. Did I say something different?
No, you just said the Miami. I'm like, wait, we're selling our Miami. Like, you made me scared that we're selling our Miami. No. Okay.
I just want to let you guys know that we are going to be putting out the list for that tomorrow. I'm actually going to post a picture for tomorrow and then make the list.
Because we have so many people have been
really
asking into it.
But I haven't actually put things on paper because I said I'm going to wait until the eggs are about to hatch or to where I feel comfortable with doing that. So I'm not counting my eggs per se. Amazon links are below all of our YouTube videos and our podcasts. In the description, there are going to be Amazon links. Is there anything else?
No. Today, our guest is Steven KATZ of SBK Reptiles.
So, Steven, can you give us a little overview of your company and what you're currently working with?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Currently working with carpet pythons and a lot of the morelia complex. That's my main focus. That's what I'm really into and enjoy. So if I wasn't able to sell a baby, I would still keep them because I love them. Like many people, I got my start just being into reptiles in general. I remember being a kid and going hiking and looking for reptiles, seeing what I could catch, little fence lizards, stuff like that. And so just having an overall interest and getting, my first leopard gecko, a 4-year-old, and keeping that alive, which is a big feat for most kids because they just kind of get it and a week later they're over it. So pretty stoked for that. Not stoked for that, but like it just had the passion going. And then I went from keeping, leopard geckos to chameleons, different geckos in general, and focused on snakes shortly after that. So like when I was 10 or 11, I discovered carpet pythons and I was like, I have to have those.
That's
So
a
I saved
lot
up
earlier than I thought you were gonna say.
Yeah, no, that was kind of the way I went. I thought ball pythons were cool, but I honestly kind of thought they were boring. And so I'll often joke about that. But I don't mean any harm by it. I have a lot of friends who keep and breed ball pythons. They're really neat. And so, um, yeah, then I got uh, my first carpet pythons around that age, and I had to get rid of them. And then I got back into it more around the time I was like 16 and started building up the collection. And then I started like really posting years later when I bred them. And so I don't know, I've been breeding them since 2012, I think, something like that, every year, producing more and more babies. And I just love it and enjoy it.
Did you grow up in Southern California?
Yes, born and raised.
So you must have just had so many reptiles growing up, like be able to herp and, find all this cool stuff outside.
Yeah. As a kid, I went herping like with my uncle because my parents weren't really into it. They supported the hobby, but they didn't know about herping and where to go look. And so I went with my uncle, but like more often than not, we didn't find snakes. I often found them just hiking and not looking. So it was kind of funny doing that. But the California and SoCal reptile industry is pretty big.
Yeah. So what made you go from, even at that young age, from four-legged creatures to snakes?
I don't know, knowing that it's easier to keep multiple, like a big collection of snakes versus a big collection of lizards. Lizards, it's not that all lizards are hard. It's just when you compare them to snakes, they're a lot more work, in my opinion, of course. Um, Snakes are just so easy. And after I saw carpet pythons, it was just like, boom. It was nothing else was on par with them.
So was that your first snake that you got at 11?
Yeah, morelia bredli.
Wow.
Bredli.
Yeah.
How expensive were Bredli at the time? They must have been semi-rare at that point in time.
They had come down in price already. I mean, it depends. Like the market fluctuated quite a bit. I kind of had an inside source, luckily, on getting them.
At 11,
so
you had an inside source?
Yeah, I've always been kind of a.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
I've been I don't know, very social, and so like I've always been a sponge, and so I've gone to different people, compare, ask around, and
Melissa just spilled beer all over herself. There's no one saw.
Smooth.
Oh, okay.
Sorry to laugh, but it was a little funny.
No, you have to. You got to acknowledge it and then move on.
I can't move on. You see my dress.
Oh man, yeah, that's a big mess.
So what kind of social circle are you going in when you're
so like there's a local shop near me here in Southern California. It's Amazon Reptile Center in Montclair. Same owner, same location since 1999. And so the owner's been super cool and just kind of helped me out, and I get the inside scoop kind of hook up on pricing and stuff like that in talking to him and forming that relationship and getting pointed in the right direction.
So when you got your first Bredli, did you get a pair? Did you have plans on breeding, or did you just want to keep them at that point?
I got a pair. So in terms of like how I am, it doesn't matter if it's goldfish or birds. If I get one of something, it needs to be a pair. I want to learn how to breed it, why it breeds, what you need to do to make it breed. Like the whole breeding aspect of animals fascinates me. And so it's not even like, if you breed it, you can make money. It's not that. It's more so like learning about it, getting that process down. That the whole thing, hatching stuff or live birth just fascinates me. And so anytime I get anything, it needs to be in pairs. So to answer the question, yeah, I got them as a pair, and I had plans of breeding them, and that didn't happen.
So what happened? Did you get more snakes? Did you grow that pair up? Where did you go from there?
I was growing them up, and then just due to like life happening, I had to
Being a
get rid of
fucking
like
12-year-old kid?
yeah, pretty much, and not having much of a say. Yeah, I had to get rid of them, so I had to downsize on my collection. Just space was an issue, and getting ready for like high school and all that stuff, like the transition. It was um, like I said, not my choice. And so it just happened. I had to get rid of them. So I didn't keep snakes for, a couple years. And then I was able to get back into it.
Awesome. Yeah, I know when I went into high school, I stopped caring about like snakes, and then I picked it up like halfway through college. So I think
Okay.
kind of even at that age, I don't know many people who care about anything but like having fun or just being a 14 to 18-year-old kid. But that's crazy that you're into it so young. So when did you pick it up back up again?
I think I was probably about 14 or 15, and I started building up the collection again. I was able to then get like racks and stuff. And keep in mind, all this was also hard to do because I wasn't old enough to legally work. So a lot of it was helping neighbors and family move from one place to a new place and get some cash flow that way. So it took time, and I just saved money. I didn't spend it on anything else. I didn't buy clothes and shoes and stuff like that for myself, like a lot of kids do because they want to look cool at school. I just took the plain Jane stuff that my parents would provide me with and saved my extra money for reptiles. And so started getting racks and was able to keep more snakes in a smaller space. And that's
And
what made it work.
Did you stay with morelia once you kind of got back into it?
So for a long time I did. And let's see, in 2013, I believe it was 2013, 2014, I actually started amassing ball pythons. I think in like, and I know. Shh, don't tell anyone, okay? I'm trusting you guys with this.
No one's
secret.
listening.
um, I keep in mind my morelia collection was pretty big at that size, a good size, and I started adding ball pythons. And in 2 weeks, I think I added 13 ball pythons. For someone who didn't keep any ball pythons at the time and was keeping my carpet collection, wasn't downsizing that. I just had plans of particular ball python projects that I envisioned, and I was like, I want to make that. One of them was actually a genetic stripe butter. I had seen one, and I was like, wow, I really want to make that. It's a really pretty ball python. Um, that never happened. I ended up getting, kind of bored with them, and people joke and make fun of me for it. And I ended up, I traded some ball pythons out for more carpet pythons. And then like the last of them, I just gave to good friends. And I was like, I don't care. It's not a loss for me. I know I paid for these snakes, but I think it's a win because now I'll have more space and less of a ball python headache.
Yeah, it's like once you go through like that first winter or that first female at like 800 grams that just stops eating forever, then you're like, fuck, my carpets will eat like any time I put a rat or mouse near it. So it's like, this is a lot easier.
Yep.
Were you attracted to other things? I mean, not just, I mean, I'm still talking to morelia, but like, obviously you had Bredli. When did you start getting into jungles or Papuans, if we want to call them that?
I personally still call them IJs or Irian Jaya carpet pythons.
Me too. Good.
To each their own. At the end of the day, it's just a common name, and so it just becomes a pissing match of what common name you want to go by. If you want to be more specific, just call it Morelia spilota harrisoni. But then even there's that pissing match that I don't want to get involved with or talk about really. I'll just stay out of it and let everyone else fight, and I'll just keep breeding snakes and enjoying them. But I don't know. I really started. So IJs were like my main focus. I don't really call Bredli carpet pythons because they're Morelia Bredli versus Morelia spilota. But a lot of people do, and so whatever, I don't care. um, so I got a lot of IJs, and I don't know. I don't think I snagged my first like jungle that I count until I think 2011. I just was working with IJs for a long time and keeping those, and that's been one of my main focuses of the carpets, and it still is. I have some that I bought that are wild caught, stuff like that, different projects I'm working with. But jungles, I dove into in like 2011.
When was the first time that you were successful with IJs?
Actually trying to breed them was 2012, 2013. I was just keeping them, and then I was a believer of like your females need to be like 2,000 grams and all this nonsense that I was reading and different things like that. And people were like, no, IJs will breed smaller. Like, they don't get as big. I was like, really? Like, so I could have bred these things like years ago? And they're like, yeah. So then I tried breeding them and was luckily successful. I always joke that carpet pythons are really easy to breed. And I don't say that in a cocky sense at all, because I feel like there's things that I would not be successful with, and other people would say, like, that's way easy to breed. And so I think I just have success with carpets.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that and you're specialized in. And I mean, I hear mixed things about IJs. Some people say that they're more difficult to keep than, say, your coastal, your jungle. They need to be kept a little bit differently. I mean, what do you think as far as the hardiness and then how you keep them in breeding and stuff like that?
I would say unless you're getting like a field collected animal, excuse me, they're all going to be easy. And for the most part, I'll keep them the same. Now, that's not entirely true, because I don't just see it as like this is an animal I'm going to breed and it gets thrown in a box. So at different times of the year or whatever, I'll put particular animals on particular bedding so that way it could contrast well, look really nice. I'll rotate when I do, like a really deep cleaning, I'll rotate animals from a rack to a cage so that way that could be on display for a little while, and so I could see it and enjoy it. But overall, I would say keep them the same. You could keep them on anywhere from like newspaper, paper towel to cypress mulch or shavings. But they do soak a lot more than other carpets. That is true. So you'll always think you have snake mites.
So do you think you need a water bowl big enough for them to fully submerge in it?
I would advise it, but in terms of need, like they're at the end of the day, they're snakes, so they're shy creatures. So they do want to feel crammed into something small and tight. But a bigger bowl, only halfway filled, is very helpful. So that way they don't flood it or the cage.
And then some people would say, hey, your snake obviously needs more humidity if it's soaking all the time. Have you messed with like keeping it higher humidity, lower humidity? Does it matter? Does humidity seem to be an issue?
So for me, I have experimented with that. I have introduced like a moss box that was like really wet, and then an area of like another tub. I had 3 containers in there. One was really sopping wet moss. One was dry cypress mulch, and then the bedding was actually moist cypress mulch, and then a deli cup of just water. And it chose the deli cup of just water.
Of course.
And it's like, all 3 deli cups were clear, and so you'd think if it wanted to hide, it would go somewhere else. But no, it still went into the deli cup with water.
Wow. I wonder what that says about their activity.
And keep in mind, because somebody will say it, this was just one time, one experiment, one snake, one small tub that I did that. But that was my personal observations.
Yeah, I mean, it's a snake hobby. You do it once and then you call it law and then get mad when people disagree with you.
Yeah, exactly. Like one and done, that's good enough.
Yeah. So what do you do as far as, I guess let's get into how you keep your carpets, which I guess includes your IJs. So how do you keep hot spot, ambient, all that good stuff?
So I used to keep them. I'll talk about how I used to keep them and how I keep them now. I used to keep stuff a little bit hotter, like a hot spot of anywhere from 90 to 92. And I was like, well, then they'll just eat more and grow faster and stuff like that, regardless of like how many times a week I'm feeding. So some people think, oh, you're just slamming them with food. No, I would still feed most things once a week. They would just always be hungry because their metabolism is going. Now I keep things a little bit cooler, and they'll still eat the same. It's just, I don't know, I like it more. And so a hot spot now for me will be anywhere between 84 to like 88. And I'll kind of rotate it with, my thermostats and set them up on timers. But across the board, I keep everything like that now in terms of a hotspot. Okay. So I don't do anything different from like one subspecies to the next. Just me personally.
Did you change your tune on getting your females 2,000 grams?
Yes. So in talking, but a lot of that isn't just like, oh, my personal observation. I've talked to different big name breeders, people who have bred one time, people who have bred a handful of times, because I feel like you could always learn and find out more and what works, and how do you know what works if you don't know what doesn't work? And so now a lot of females I'll breed probably right around the 1,000 to 1,400 gram mark, which a lot of people would still consider small. One story I talk about is I had a female that was like 900 grams, and her sister was, I think, 1,000 to 1,100 grams. And the one I ended up breeding, they were the same age, was the 900 gram female because she had a look like I could breed. She produced follicles when I palpated her. And the other one just didn't look quite ready, even though if you go by the book, the other one was bigger and had more weight.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Are some of these wild caught, or do you know how old they are? Does age play a factor?
I think age does play a factor because here in captivity, we could get anything up to size in 18 months in reality if we slam it with food. I wouldn't advise it. And so in theory, it would be up to size, but I would say breed females right around 3 years, 3 to 5 years, and probably right around that 1,200 gram mark, 1,000 gram mark. And to touch base on what I just said, I wouldn't go telling people to breed their 900 gram females. I mean, this is something I'm constantly checking on my animals, I'm palpating. It's something you learn to look for, and so doesn't make me a professional, but right, it was something that I had witnessed, and she didn't have any problems laying eggs. She didn't have problems getting back up to weight. But I don't breed all my females at 900 grams just because one female did it. There's just, she looked ready to go and she did it.
Yeah, there's this thing. I made this whole video about how big corn snakes need to be to breed.
Shameless plug.
Made this. It's like the 300. They need to be 300 grams to breed, and I've never weighed a corn snake before. So I took one of my females, and on video, and I put in the video, weighed it out. It was 180 grams. I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't watch she laid a healthy clutch. It was the Miami Okatee.
She is the smaller.
No, she's small, but she's fat, and fuck it, I don't know. It works. She's like 4 years old. She's ready to go.
But we always talk about it's the two of the three, right? Because it's 300 grams.
I usually just like age,
and what's the third one
for corn snakes?
300
length,
grams,
but I don't even care about that either.
That's crazy. I didn't realize ours are only 180.
Yeah, it's
way like smaller than.
But people, I think the overall thing is that people just keep their snakes probably too big.
Right.
I don't know if you feel the same way.
I'd agree. I mean, how big is the average man? You can make people 800 pounds if you feed them that much. You probably shouldn't have a 800-pound human. And so same with snakes. How big are they in the wild? How often are they eating? I'll feed some of my babies sometimes twice a week, but my adults, I'm feeding about 12 times a year, sometimes less. Even my breeder animals, and they're not thin, they are lean, but they're producing every year and they're throwing big, healthy clutches. It's not like they're laying 4, 5 eggs. That would tell me something different, but they're still pumping out, 20 plus eggs. So I don't think, in my opinion, that I'm doing something wrong.
What would be your cues as far as this animal's healthy weight, this animal's too skinny, this animal's too fat? Is there anything that you kind of look for to signify that?
Too fat, I would say you could just kind of see it. I'm sure you guys keeping corn snakes have seen a fat corn snake.
Oh yeah. When you can
something
see
that eats small
between
rats.
the scales and yeah.
And then you're like, is that gravid? It's the wrong time of year.
Nope, just
and like its tail looks like it doesn't even belong to the same snake. It's like a tiny little tail, a big fucking sausage body. It's the worst.
Right. And so you've seen that. So I would say that for a carpet python. I hope I never really see one that big, but like, I don't know, just a slug. Just picture a slug.
I feel like carpets, they'll just get like 10 feet if you feed them a lot. Like they don't get like terribly obese. I've never seen one that's like too terribly obese, but they're just fucking huge. And you're like, that's too big.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because all the people that would overfeed, are too afraid to get bit by the snake. So then they don't feed it enough. And so it just is an equal balance. And then they end up getting rid of their carpet later. I don't know. I haven't seen a big slug, luckily, but I've seen slugs in like other things, ball pythons and corn snakes. And I'm like, wow, that's really overweight. In terms of too lean, I would say for like any snake, you could see its spine and that triangle look instead of that rounded over look. I have seen that for sick snakes that people have asked me to like fix, which is like, I'm not a vet. I'm just going to take it to a vet.
Wait, they're like, what? Do something? Like what?
Yeah, people say that because you have a bigger snake collection. They're like, oh, fix this, and it's like it just needs a vet. Like just you could do the same thing.
Snake, put it with your healthy snakes, and then fix.
Wow, that's one we haven't gotten before. I'm glad. Like,
thank God. Well, no, I would shut that shit down. I'm sure you do too. Like,
for the most part, I just turn them down. I just say like, oh, this is the vet I use. But I tell them, I try and always explain it like, this is what I would do. So you could do the same. And then they're like, oh, okay. Like, you don't have anything you could do to fix it? And I'm like, no, I'm not a vet.
Like and I'm not like Houdini. I don't like put a spell and they're fixed. Like, what?
You'd be surprised how many bearded dragons people offer me. I'm like, I don't even keep lizards. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I've seen thin snakes come in, like, because I've had Irian Jaya carpet pythons imported through different brokers, and it doesn't matter. It's not the broker's fault. It's not the importer's fault. It's the guy out catching them or how they're set up at the facility over there and taken care of. Because in reality, I don't know if they're kept over there on a farm for 2 years or 2 days before they get sent over here. It's just the truth. But I've seen some thin ones, and most of them luckily have bounced back and started eating. And that's why I've continued to have them imported, because I'm not losing a bunch. I'm not. Yeah.
I want to get back to that. Just someone in the chat asked, why do you maternally incubate over artificial? And I don't know if that's an absolute truth. I didn't know that you maternally incubate. If you do maternally incubate everything, but take it that.
Not me personally. My snakes do. But
you mean you don't shiver around them?
Yeah.
Naked.
I can't say that. I don't know. That's a tough one. I go back and forth because, like this year, I actually just got back from going out of the country to Mexico last week, and so my first 2 clutches hatched last week while I was out of town. So I had my brother stop by, check them out, and help out. So I wasn't able to do maternal incubation because it's a lot easier to take care of new hatchlings when they're all locked in a little container versus fighting off a mom and they're all scattered across a cage. So I didn't want to do that to my brother who, is just helping me out.
Yeah.
In terms of how I decide, it's little things like depending on time of year, I kind of do the math and I'm like, yeah, I'll be in town, so I'll allow the female to do it. I see that in the babies generally hatch bigger. They tend to do better. There's people who would argue that and just say you're incubating wrong or something like that. At the end of the day, I would say my reasoning is I find it fascinating. The females know exactly what they're doing, and it's just amazing. And it doesn't ever get old.
And does it take longer for the animals to hatch with the female than it does in the incubator?
I've had both. So I've had females where the eggs started hatching at like day 58, and artificial incubation eggs started hatching at like 62 days. And so there's little plus or minuses. Some people would say it just depends on the type of animal, whether it be like jungle, IJ, or bredli. I haven't noted that. Like, I don't keep track of that in terms of like this pairing. I'm doing artificial this year and see how many days it hatches, and then I'm gonna do a repeat pairing and do maternal and see how many days. I just kind of see a general day or count. The other thing I wanted to actually touch on is people talk about not doing it because of females, it takes a lot out of them. But again, them being in captivity, we have literally an unlimited amount of food that we could give them. Now, due to your finances or something, maybe you can't pump them up with food. That's something personal. But in theory, we have the resources to feed the snake every day for a whole year. There's an unlimited amount of rodents that we have access to. And so it is easy to get a female back up to weight for the following year to breed with no problem at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would be a bigger problem in something that doesn't eat constantly. But if you have a female that slams food, I mean, I don't know if you have any problem feeders or anything like that in your collection. Like, obviously, you don't want a female that isn't slamming food to maternally incubate, it wouldn't seem.
So I had, how did this go? I had two females, both happened to be jungle types. And I say type because lineage is a big thing and I like to be more correct than not. Anyways, they were both mouse eaters, and they both laid their clutch of eggs. I pulled the eggs and they hatched. Both females were like 9 years old because they were mouse eaters. Well, as soon as I pulled the eggs and they had their, shed cycle right after that, the first thing they took was a rat. So I will say that you could get a female to switch to rats. And if she's maybe a bad eater, it will take her a longer time to get up to weight. But she might become a better eater after breeding, believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen total shifts as far as females after laying clutches and stuff like that. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense. But the jungles seem to be hard to get off of. I would do when I was first beginning, I didn't know that there was a difference between rats and mice, and I just threw a mouse in there, and then it took me a long time to get her back on mice. And then I have a male who's on mice, but it's great because he's like the size of a corn snake, and he's perfect. But yeah, that seems like just something to think about when you're maternally incubating or artificial incubating. But I wanted to get back into the like importing stuff, and so how do you go about, first of all, importing them, and then what do you do once you get them in? Like, do you treat them?
So it depends on whether the babies are farmed bred or farmed hatched. And so to explain that term, it could be whether let's ignore the laws for a minute because some stuff is not followed.
Well,
and
also,
that's out
do
of
you
my
believe
control.
them? Whatever they say.
I don't know what I exactly believe, but there are two different things that happen. One is animals are collected over there in Papua, and animals are bred on a farm, the eggs are laid, and then they hatch them and then send the babies over. So that is one story that gets told depending on who you talk to.
Yeah.
The other is they go out the right time of year, breeding season, and collect gravid females and allow the females to lay their eggs on the farm, and then they release the female, hatch the eggs on the farm, and send them back. The other is they just find brand new young babies that are freshly hatched or moms on their clutches with freshly hatched eggs and just take those babies and send them over. What is right and what is wrong is out of my jurisdiction. I don't want to get into that because at the end of the day, how things are being done and what lie you're told is really out of your control, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, that's a whole other mess. But what was the original question?
I don't know. I want to play devil's advocate on that. So it's like someone is saying, hey, like, why would you give money to this system that's obviously they're doing sketchy things or they may be collecting from the wild? So why would you continue to get stock from Indonesian farms when there's captive-born babies here?
Oh, that's a good one. So to answer that question, the insight that I just gave is like the know-it-all, like knowing the true insight. That doesn't mean I support that. And part of that is knowing who your broker is and knowing what farm they're getting them from and knowing things like that. Are they trying to send animals that aren't on quota? Are they sending 50 animals instead of 30, which is on the permit? You know, stuff like that. Supporting that is supporting a bad overall market and industry. So I don't do that, but just because I don't do that doesn't mean I'm not aware of what goes on. Like the same thing, I don't keep green tree pythons, but I know that green trees are protected and on a no collect and send over list, and yet it still happens. And what are they called? They're called farmed hatched babies, but it's not true that they're wild caught adults.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of about doing the research and knowing.
Yeah. And what's the advantage of bringing in this fresh blood into the hobby?
So for anyone that keeps up with it, a lot of stuff is kind of mixed. You could breed a IJ and a coastal, and some of the babies will pass one way or the other. And so then you could just, one would sell them as pure IJs or pure coastals, or at a pet shop as unknown, and then it becomes pure later when someone says it looks like this, so it must be this. In terms of bringing in IJs like I do, it's to have new blood. It's to be able to offer that. You know, our market is very limited in terms of outcrossing and what we do have available. And one day, you know, they're going to close up the gates and we're not going to be able to get IJs or other Indonesian animals because we see it all the time. Blackthroat monitors from Tanzania. They used to be imported in the numbers and, you know, huge numbers. Now you can't get them. They're really hard to get. And I hear the stories of them passing through Europe and then coming here, you know, and that's something I don't work with, but I'm aware of, you know, what happens. And so if I could import, you know, legally, keep track of bloodlines, because we know now that's important, and offer that to others, I think it's totally worth it. And I constantly joke because I have ball python friends and say, you know, maybe one day I'll get like that yellow belly or that dinker project, like, you know, and I'll pop up something. But truthfully, I won't, because I don't look at the little things that so many people who have found, you know, the little hidden gene things see. I don't have an eye for that. I just see overall picture, you know, its pattern or its color, stuff like that. I wouldn't see a little tiny, like a ringer on a het pied ball python. I'd totally miss that. I'd be like, oh, that's some weird scar. Must have got hurt in the wild. Sell it for what I paid for it.
I mean, they seem, though, to be more polygenic than a lot of the other carpets, as far as you can get really red dominant animals, yellow dominant animals, like brown colored animals. I mean, it seems like there is a different variety. So like, how do you pick out what are the best ones? How do you make sure that when you import them, you're getting high quality animals that you want to breed and, you know,
do you get HD pictures?
I would say truthfully, that's just how variable carpet pythons are. We don't see a big difference here because like Jungles, there was only a handful of original founder animals that were brought into the country. And so all of the animals, most of the Jungles, go back to just a few founder animals. And so all the looks are going to be kind of based on that. If I import a group of 50 hatchling IJs, then yeah, we'll see a big difference because it's 50 different animals and potentially 4 to 6 different parents involved right there because one female isn't laying 50 eggs. In terms of how I pick them, I just like variety. So I'm not cherry picking when I do these import deals. I'm doing it so everyone wins. Only a select few are really into IJs, and so I'm pretty close with those guys, and so I'm making sure they're getting taken care of too, because if I try and keep back everything, Murphy's Law will say I kept back the best, and then it's going to die in my hands. Whereas if, you know, everyone gets a little bit of something, somebody will produce something cool, they'll remember they got it from me, we're going to be keeping in touch, and I'll just buy an F1 baby from them.
So it's more of a communal effort than a lot of other snakes.
Correct. Yeah, I'm not in this to try and be number one and look at I held back all of this, because then in reality, after 1 or 2 seasons of that, who's going to want to buy imported babies from me? They're going to be like, oh, he's just sending out all the junk. And if it was about that, I have different shops and outlets that I could just go wholesale junk babies to if that's what it really came down to. So yeah, it is a team effort, believe it or not.
And you kind of touched on the Jungles coming in with just, you know, a few founder animals, and then we bred them to what they are today. So is it possible that we have a maroon and bright yellow IJ someday? Is that what you're going for? Or like, just where you go with line breeding, and what can we expect in the future, or what would be the ideal IJ?
Truthfully, I think IJs are perfect as is. Like, they're just really awesome. It's hard to say because so many people who keep carpet pythons would consider a IJ, oh, that's just a normal carpet python, or that's a junk snake. Like they're just kind of looked down on, truthfully. But it depends. Everybody has a different look. Like Eric Burke is working with some IJs that I'm pretty sure it's on his website. I hope I'm not blowing one of his secret projects.
I'll blow it for you.
Okay. Well, no, it's not. It's not no. That one. Believe it or not. Yeah.
There's another one. Maybe you are blowing it. Holy shit.
Maybe. Anyways, we'll say I'll make up a name for it so that way I don't blow it for him.
Well, fuck, man. I want to know now.
I'm pretty sure it's on his website, but like a chocolate line. And so depending on who you are, you would say, oh, like that's too much brown for me, or that's too much this for me, that's too much that. And, you know, he also has like his lighter stuff, like his coastal stuff, the citrus line. Someone might say that's too much yellow for me. It's all to each their own. And so for me, I really want to work on like the striped stuff. I know it's polygenic, but we could really refine that and make it better. But there's so much to do with them because we have new blood, and we could just only make it better if we selectively breed. Color is one of them. Pattern. I have some animals that have this crazy, weird, busy pattern. And so I'll try and breed that with something else and see what I make.
So to me, the obvious route is make them more red or make them more yellow. Yeah. And it sounds like no one's doing that.
Red.
So I have an animal that was a very high red animal for a long time. And if you've kept up with IJs, they're kind of like crested geckos. They fire up and fire down, and it's hard to capture that in an image. Only a few people have been able to capture like the color change, because even doing it, the lighting, like there's lots of variables. I've taken pictures over the years and I'm always trying to capture it, and I think I've maybe done it twice. And I take a lot of pictures of a lot of different animals. It's hard to do. And so I do have one animal that has held its red. It's hard to show in a picture. And so that's one project, but it'll take a lot of time. So maybe in the next 7 to 10 years.
7 to 10 years. That's long-term
Awesome.
thinking.
Yeah.
And the babies come out more red and then dull down as they age.
Some would say dull down. I would say color up. I mean, yeah, it's a really red worm, but something that I don't know how many people do or don't think about, like scrub pythons from Indo, they hatch out red as well, and then they go through their color change, and their color isn't too far off from carpets. You know, their pattern's different, stuff like that, but you could see a lot of similarities in the color, and so one might wonder, why do the babies hatch out red and then go through a color change? You know, what's in that area that they live in that they need to be red, maybe, per se, like whereas a green tree python needs to be red or yellow as a baby to blend with, you know, those flowers and then go through its color change and turn green.
It's stupid, but I just kind of made the connection. Like even bolins in Papua, or scrubs, or all these things start off more of a reddish ground color, and then as they age kind of get more brown or tannish, and black. And I never really noticed that until right now.
Oh, epiphany.
Yeah, maybe it's like a leaf litter and stuff is reddish color. I don't know, but that's super interesting.
Or maybe they're all the same snake. They're all IJs.
Holy shit. They're all coastals. So are there, as far as, do you keep like granite or anything like that?
Yes.
Any
so
mutations?
To date, I have every carpet morph that's publicly out there in the US market, except for caramel and hypo. Caramel, I'm just personally not a big fan of. Like,
is that in the US? I've never heard of it. I'm not that versed in IJs. But...
yeah, well, that's in coastals, but yes, it's in the US.
Oh, I thought you were talking about IJs.
Okay, sorry. I was talking about overall genes. I have all of them except for the axanthic line of coastals. I have the axanthic line IJs and caramel and hypo in coastals. Otherwise, yeah, I have everything. In terms of the morphs. Yeah, just quite the variety. Granites and axanthics, and that's it in IJs.
So IJs, I've heard that you need to like keep the bloodlines pure. Like I thought that's why people are importing, to put them to granites, so that, I mean, what's the issue there with the recessive and granite and outbreeding and stuff like that?
A lot of people have had like adult females, similar to the desert gene in ball pythons. They kind of drop dead after laying eggs or just before laying eggs. People have had that in pure IJ granites. So people are working on outcrossing them to ideally help with that. And so far, it seems to have helped. But again, this is in small numbers, and science likes to have, you know, big numbers and a lot of record keeping.
Well, that's the story with every snake thing we're trying to figure out. I mean, it's like almost every podcast, I'm like, oh, I'd really love to like see if that's a true thing. But, you know, 2 people are doing it and there's no money to like actually get a sample size that's worthy. And so we're all just kind of, you know, either banking off one person doing it or just ignoring it completely.
I guess that's why it's good that they have a community of people that work. At least if there's going to be people working on it, there's like at least 4 or 5 hardcore people that are like willing to do the work and kind
put in
of
that
share
time
with each other. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I have a het granite male that I think is like 50% outcross blood. And so he's just 100% het, and I plan on breeding him to a field collected female to make a clutch of possible hets, and see about going back, proving out that which ones are hets, and then doing that one more time to once I prove out it's a het, breed it to another wild caught animal, and then find which one is going to prove out to be het, and then make homozygous animals that I actually keep for my breeding stock.
That is a fucking nightmare.
I
Holy
think
shit.
it'll work really well because I'm using a male, and so like I have a granite female that is an adult, and so I could use this het male and then make a bunch of pos hets and just run the male possible het to an adult ready to breed female when the male's a year and a half. So it'll kind of fast track the project.
It's that important though that you don't put head to head or especially visual to visual?
No. So in terms of the gene, there's nothing wrong with doing visual to visual, het to het, stuff like that. What people are seeing is that homozygous animal, so a granite female, lays bad eggs or slugs out, dies, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nothing bad in terms of like where if you breed jag to jag, 25% of them are going to be dead Lucy's in the egg.
Right. So it's just kind of down the line. So do you think that it could ever that you're going to that you're going to improve your likelihood of fertile eggs and then the offspring being good by doing that, going down and down the line and doing the posset thing? You think it's ever going to be solved basically, or are you always going to be swimming upstream like that?
No, I think it'll definitely be fixed. I mean, in outcrossing anything, it seems to only make things stronger. So depending on who you talk to, some people would say there's no problem with the granite gene. Excuse me. Even if there's no problem, outcrossing is only going to help. We see problems with stuff just that are inbred for many years, and it happens so much with recessive traits because everybody wants to make the homozygous form, cash in on the project. Excuse me. I always joke that if I produce a new morph, only a couple of very close friends will know, but if it would ideally be in IJs, and I would just outcross the hell out of it before releasing them. So that way the start, the F1 babies that people are buying or whatever are really outcrossed as hell.
Yeah. So you're just you're making certain. And the fact that
but that's just me personally. Not everybody would care. They would just, let's see how many of these I can make and sell.
Yeah. I mean, but that says something. And I mean, there needs to be people like that out there working in projects, even though it seems like what happened to where I felt like IJs were the things most commonly seen in the pet trade as far as carpet pythons. And then everything else, I guess morphs came along and then coastals and jungles and all that stuff. But it seems like IJs were a big thing. And now, I mean, what happens if they close, and then were there just people not working with them, not keeping them because they knew that they were always going to be imported?
I couldn't answer that, like if there's people who didn't care in that aspect, but there's a lot of people who, like I said, they consider them a junk snake. They're just brown and black. Like, where's the beauty to that? When you could have black and yellow. But like I said, it's to each their own. I really like them and enjoy them, and so that's why I work with them. I actually personally don't keep any pure coastals because they don't do anything for me. They just get big, and in terms of color, they're not that pretty, in my opinion. And so if coastals were from a location that you could import from, I wouldn't care at all. I would just say, I'm not into coastals. So I could see people not being into IJs, and that's why they kind of get put at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, I think it's just crazy that we have these animals from Australia that at this point are more spread throughout our hobby here in the US without ever being imported than fucking IJs who are being imported every single year.
Right.
It's just kind of wild. So obviously
In fact,
mentioned, yeah.
To touch on that, when I talked to different importers and asked to get IJs, a lot of them are like, "Why do you want that?" They're like, it's not a high demand snake. They don't get asked for it a lot, and they have the ability to import them. And so some of them, some of the importers that haven't dealt with me or don't know me, have just straight up said no because they don't want to get stuck with them if I don't send them the money.
Right.
Because it's that hard of a sell, I guess, for them.
Which probably goes to the point that they're plucking them out of the wild. You cornered yourself. But I mean, someone's got to be getting these animals in and getting fresh bloodlines in. So what, going forward after the IJs and stuff, what, we'll start with jungles, I guess, first. What jungle projects are you working on?
So I have like my zebra stuff. So I'm growing up, holdback zebras that I produce. A pair of super zebras, the female that I actually bought from a friend. But I'll be pairing super zebra to super zebra, different zebra stuff. But that's kind of like a known trait. I'll be trying to work on producing my own striped jungles, as well as acquiring some that are well documented. I have a pair of animals that was produced by Doug Price, and they are Lazic line jungles. So that'll be really neat to see because they're like F1 or F2 animals in reality. Like looking at the charts, the parents are very old, and so he's just kept breeding them and not holding back babies. So they're not really that many generations deep. So there's a lot that can be done once I pair them together. That male actually was bred to a female Palmerston jungle. So that's a locality of jungles that is known for producing a lot of striped babies, but their color is more of like a dull orange. They're not really bright yellow. So I'll try and make some striped animals as well as add yellow to the Palmerstons, which some people would say, you bred a non-locality specific to a locality specific animal, and they'll be bummed about. And others will say, I don't care. They're both documented pure jungles. I want in.
Yeah, I mean, that comes to the point where you're like, hey, I could get this bright black and yellow animal, but you don't have proper lineage to where you can get maybe, from my understanding, Palmerstons are more gold and black than bright yellow and black. So it's like, so you want to go for the sure thing rather than, a designer animal or something like that.
Correct.
And then go ahead.
I want to work with both though at the same time, and I just want to put it out there and say like, oh, this is what you're getting and this is what you're getting. One, like my profile picture on my Facebook page is my breeder male Veloster, and he's technically a documented undocumented animal. What that means is there's many generations in his history that is documented, but at one point you get to a part where they don't know what the parents were. And so if you looked at it, you would say, wow, that's a smoking jungle. But in reality, when you follow the trail and pull the thread, you find that it's unknown. So you can't guarantee if it's pure. You can't guarantee that it's not. And so those animals really sell like hotcakes. And in my opinion, I choose pure, but I also like that animal, if that makes sense. So I work with both.
I mean, in my opinion, and which I've been seeing for some reason a lot, is people saying pure jungles for sale, and that fucking that drives me a little crazy. I don't know if you do that, but I mean, you just can't guarantee something's pure that didn't come over to the country like in a correct manner.
Line. You can't. So you're just saying nothing should ever be called pure? I mean,
I just could get called pure.
Even if
there you go. Like if you're getting it from Papua, then
okay. Even if you can't go all the way back, there's a difference between one you can go 3 generations back and one you can't go any. That's a difference.
Yes.
So we have to, but and then you have to
just don't call them pure because you don't know.
So what? This 3 generation level? That's what we're gonna call it? Like.
Well, no, you got to know for sure. Just don't call them pure. That's like a word that means 100% absolute. Like pure is
nobody's pure anything.
That's such a bad.
Nobody's pure anything.
Nothing's pure anything.
So let's
besides IJs. So I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that. I just don't just say what line it is, and if it's pure by our standards, then it is. If it's not, it's not. So I mean, I'll say that mine's hairline, right? And then people say that hair kind of puts some diamonds in there sometimes, and some are pure, some aren't. So I'm like, all right, well, mine looks better than most of them, so I'm cool with that. I just like looking at them.
But at the end of the day,
I'm not going to call it pure.
But at the end, but at the end of I can't talk. At the end of the day, if you're someone who cares, even if that person put pure, you're going to ask for that full lineage anyway. Yeah. No matter if they put pure or they didn't put pure. And then if you're someone who doesn't,
it perpetuates can you let me finish? Go.
If they put pure or not, and you're someone who cares, you're going to ask for that lineage anyway. And then if you don't care, you don't care. So why does it matter how they sell it? Because you're going to ask for that lineage and you're going to know. And then when you get that lineage, you decide, oh, okay, I'm cool with this. I'm not cool with this. I'm going to buy it. I'm not going to buy it. Or if you don't care, you don't care. So why does it matter what that word they're putting is if you're going to ask for the lineage anyway?
Because some person who just got in 2 years.
Thank you.
There you go.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It protects the people who don't know.
Yeah.
So check it out. In your scenario, that's perfect, right? Because someone who knows will do the homework. But someone who doesn't know will buy the snake and they'll get on the receipt, oh, it's pure. And later when they want to sell it
But later when they sell it, the same thing will happen. That someone who cares will ask for the lineage.
Yeah, but why don't we just whittle it down to people who care or things that are labeled?
But you're going to ask for the lineage no matter what.
Right. But you would be bummed out because you didn't know at the time when you bought it. You bought it as pure. And then you're trying to sell these animals and you made 30 animals and you thought they were pure and they're not. And the hardcore people.
Okay. I get that. Because when you're trying to sell it and someone asks for the lineage and like, oh, this isn't pure, I'm not going to pay the pure money. Okay. And it's
not even the pure money. They just uninterested. They don't want it for free. And then you're stuck with the babies and you're like, what are you talking about? Like the guy who sold it to me said pure, and
he spilled beard on him too. Sorry.
But to answer your question, yes, I was actually one of those guys. I posted pure jungles and then pulled the thread a little more and turned out the animals were like questionable. And it's like, for me, one might say like, oh, that's what you get, put your foot in your mouth, blah, blah, blah. And for me, it was only more fire to keep burning to push the pure argument, to make sure that we document, to make sure that we ask questions, stuff like that. Because I'll take a bad experience that happened to me and share it to help others learn from it. I don't go into the corner and cry about it and not want to share it and be embarrassed. No, it happened to me. And so because it happened to me, I could talk about it and explain and hopefully help someone else who is about to post pure animals for sale. And then they'll say, oh, let me do a little more research. These aren't pure. Let me just post them as what they are. And they don't look like an idiot. Because just because maybe I look like an idiot once or twice or 100 times doesn't mean somebody else can't learn from that. And I keep them from looking like an idiot. Like that's how the community should be. You should be willing to help someone else. Just because you look like an idiot once or 100 times doesn't mean somebody else needs to try and teach them.
And we should be able to say, hey man, like I understand that you thought that those were pure, but now you're saying you're not. Like if you said, hey, I understand, I fucked up. So now we go back and we're like, yeah, dude, that's cool. That makes sense. Like now we all learn what's pure and what's not. Why don't we just call things by lineage? I mean, that's what would seem to be the thing, is just say, hey, this is this lineage, this lineage. Some people consider certain lineage pure, some people don't. So I don't know.
Right. But then you get into that gray area of whether you breed a documented animal that is pure. Let's say I take a pure new field collected IJ and breed it to an IJ Jag. Well, half the babies are going to be 50% pure, and you could say, you could take that one step further and say it's really a higher percentage because IJ Jag had some IJ blood in it. But if I call them, say, my line, or this is a parent, the parent, one of them was a field collected animal, someone would say, oh, then they're pure, but it's only half the puzzle.
Yeah.
And so to call it by one line could kind of get that gray area, because you're just using maybe the big name or the bigger part of it, and the other part is not even the same subspecies or documented.
I think this makes such a unique situation for carpet pythons, at least in our hobby, to the extent that it is, that it's like so colluded and confusing sometimes. I think, especially probably for people coming into it, but it's like, shit, all these things are carpet pythons, but you can breed them all together, and even Bredli can be bred together, all these things. And it's like, and I think maybe it wasn't as frowned upon back in the day to put a jungle to a coastal.
Not as frowned upon back in the day. Let's acknowledge that.
Well, yeah, but and a lot of the people, as soon as even the albinos, you saw those outcrossed immediately when they were pure Darwin, and it would have been sweet if we had. But there are a bunch of pure Darwins out there and stuff like that. But
are they really pure? Do you have the lineage?
Well, whoever brought him into a zoo, however the hell we got albino, Darwin's over here. I don't know, but I mean, they have a certain look to them in comparison to some of the others. So like a lot of them have IJ and Bredli and stuff in them. Not Bredli, but mostly IJ. And they come out like pink and yellow. And then the Darwins are more banded, pure, like white and yellow, white and yellow, white and yellow. But I don't know. To me, it's like, why would your first thing is to breed that thing to an IJ? I don't know. Maybe that's what you had laying around. I don't know. Go ahead.
There's a big, this is all I had, and so I'm going to throw them together. Excuse me. And then there's the greed that you hear about, because to an untrained eye, before I had seen Darwin's in person, I was one of those guys that said, like, they look the same. But after having one side by side, and actually not even side by side, but seeing one in person, you could see there is a difference. But it's hard to explain until you see it. If you just see pictures online, you're like, that's the same snake. And so then the greed aspect of, you can make hets that look like they're pure hets and then sell them as that, and that's what happens.
Yeah. So do you hold any line as far as where's your cutoff? Mine would be like, don't put Bredli into any of the other carpets, or obviously rough scales and shit like that. But do you have a morelia line to where it's like, don't mix this with this?
That's tough. I used to say, like, don't do Bredli to anything else, like just keep Bredli pure. But that's a tough one, because I know enough people that may be interested in, say, a Bredli rough scale cross, right? Let's say I get 60 eggs, which would be a huge clutch. But let's say I get 60 babies in first year. I know enough people that before I do it, I would ask them, hey, would you guys be interested in this? Whether it be me selling you a baby or giving it to you for free, but you'd have to keep it forever. And I know enough people that I could trust that I would be able to maybe do that. But there's no, just because I tried to do that, I went that far and said, I know I could trust them. What happens when, as we've seen in the industry, people spontaneously die, whether it be to a car accident, health issues, or murder? Like I most recently heard. Yeah, I just heard of a situation of a woman shooting her husband, and his like rare reptile collection got split up. But something like that happens, and that one animal that was supposed to be kept as a pet gets given to a friend or a Joe Smo and gets bred.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that goes for a lot of things that there's just one guy doing, or one guy focused in, or one line, or like I think Nick Mutton said on NPR, is like he would bring a line so far back as far as he could until he reached like a dead person or some sketchy situation. So it's like, even if you're trying to document your animals, you're gonna bump into a dead guy or a sketchy situation.
And so in terms of like what you shouldn't cross or what I wouldn't cross, it gets tough to say, because like I said, I would try and do as much as I could to make sure that the animals got represented as what they were. But at the same time, you can't guarantee that. And so I don't know. I would ideally say I would keep my bredli pure, even though I have a project in mind that I'll be working on that would in theory be crossing them.
Oh no! What's your theory? Can we get in on?
Well,
your
it's not
theory?
anything secret. Like, it's been done in other countries, but like the hypo bredli jags, like those are just really hot. But what happens to the animals that are not jags that could pass as pure bredli? Like, do you feed them to your Crebo, or are you greedy and do you sell them?
The one thing I hate is the jag sibling thing.
Right.
No, that is, the jungle jag sibling. No, that's a jungle coastal. That's not a jag sib. That's a cross, bro. You're not telling people the whole story, in my opinion.
Yep. In fact, people who don't know would think, oh, I bought a jag sib, so when does it turn to a jag?
Right.
Because they don't know. They're like, oh, I saw this jag, so I bought a jag sib. Like, when does it, and they don't know. It's not their fault that somebody misled them, or maybe didn't explain in detail and just kind of beat around the bush and sold the animal.
Yeah. What would you do, I guess, in that situation?
I don't know. That's a tough one, because I guess in reality, it only matters if, say, those animals are bred again. So you can make, let's say I make a 75% bredli, 25% coastal, and I want to sell it as 100% bredli, which I would never do. But let's say I wanted to do that. It only really matters if the person buying it has ambitions of breeding it. If it got sold to someone at a pet shop, and which again, I wouldn't advise, not my mindset. But if somebody bought it as a pet, in reality, there's no real harm in that. But you can't guarantee it. What happens when they want to sell it and the person who buys it from them has ambitions of breeding it and it gets bred? That's the unknown is truthfully the problem, because you can't guarantee it. So yeah, I know I'll get a lot of shit for this, but I would probably Crebo them. And anyone who would be insensitive to that, it's like we could breed feeder rodents for our snakes, a living mammal, a life, whether you value it or not, but we can't breed snakes for food. Makes no sense to me, especially snakes that eat snakes. It's not like I'm getting the snake and I'm stuffing it inside a mouse and feeding it back to its parent or something disgusting like that. It's this snake happens to eat snakes.
I know people have probably heard me talk about this too much, but there is no hierarchy to the life of, it's still eating an animal, whether it's a mouse, whether it's a snake, whether it's a chicken. I don't know what the hell it's eating, but it's
I always disagree with you.
There's no hierarchy. Just because we like snakes doesn't mean it's any more of a life than a mouse.
No, okay. but every life is valued on some thing.
Besides the mice that we feed off every single
no,
week.
No. But
Okay.
they don't have no value. They have a value because they feed our snakes. But I'm saying there's no way to. My shit's on, okay. You, I don't think
They're just a less than value.
Yes, and he's saying there's no real hierarchy to anything unless a hierarchy.
If something dies, it dies.
Stop. Unless a hierarchy we place on it, but I'm like, we place everything on. There's no nothing unless humans make it. So I feel like that argument is flawed because there's no nothing unless humans did it.
Well, but it's a self-centric view of what a human is, right? So we're better than everything, and then it's a hierarchy that goes down. But it's not true. We all die.
We humans make everything. There's no science unless we said there's science. We discovered it. We did all that shit. That doesn't exist unless we discovered it and did all that. So we did it all. So the hierarchy we make is because we made it. We make it all.
Right.
So I don't think you can say there's no. There is
why
a
can't you
hierarchy.
backtrack and say, hey, maybe like
there is a hierarchy? The shit, eat shit, eat shit, eat shit. That's the hierarchy.
So then, if you would then, based on that, and I'm not trying to attack you, Melissa, but I just want to make a point. So if you would say that, most people would say, like, if you have the option to save a mouse or a human baby, both in the middle of the road, most people would choose the human baby, right? Innocent life, and it's a human. And so most would say we have this idea that humans are the top. We're the top.
Because that human can eat that mouse.
Right. So then one would say if a human wanted to cook and prepare mice for themselves to eat, nobody would care. Nobody would bat an eye. And if they wanted to eat a snake, it would be different for snake owners because they would be like, oh, don't eat that snake. But then would you draw the line for like, don't eat that horse, but you could eat that cow? Dude, even though we're at the end of the day, at the end of the day, we're saying we're the top. All other animals are below us. So why should it matter whether we're going to eat a dog, a cat, or a horse, or a cow if we're the top?
It's hard because put the constraints. If I'm starving, I'll eat the cutest fucking cuddliest dog in the goddamn world if I need to eat. If I need to eat to stay alive, I will eat our dog we have in our apartment right now.
Oh, how dare you! I would eat you. I would kill you and eat you and feed it to her.
Like at the end of the day, yes, like a freaking lion can kill me and eat me. And so if you want to say in that sense, like, but like we as humans and we'll kill each other to stay alive.
And like Dan said in the chat, he's like, well, there's cultural differences, of course. Like in Asian countries, it's not taboo to eat ants, dogs, whatever the hell.
Cats.
In Europe, I think they eat horses more so than we would.
And like that's the hard part is like to define to bring human nature to one single point as like defining that hierarchy is also really hard. Like you said, like I don't think you can bring humans to that one.
Well, as humans, we're keeping snakes in little boxes, so we're fucking shit up anyway.
I keep mine in big boxes, okay?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think like I used to have a job in the meat industry in a meat department, and so in doing like research, being well read on the matter or somewhat well read on the matter, I always just argue I'm down for humane slaughter of any animal. If you're going to eat it, I would want it to be humanely slaughtered. That's what it comes down to. When you do research on other countries and how they eat some of these other animals that we would consider our friend or our pet, if it's not being humanely euthanized, it just sucks, and that's period.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that there's something to be said for just feeding other snakes. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Or I mean, I hate, honestly, when I see snakes that are severely disfigured, or any animal for that matter. Like I used to volunteer at this reptile rescue. It only happened once because I was like super disturbed with what I saw, but it's like this metabolic bone disease that was so bad in this bearded dragon, that you could totally tell that it couldn't walk, it couldn't do anything. Like they were basically giving it, like hand feeding it crickets. Like, all right, this is no quality of life for this animal to live. There's a certain point to where the quality of life is so bad, it's better off euthanized than trying to keep it alive. Because in the wild, that thing wouldn't last a day. I mean, at some
something
point,
else would grab it.
yeah, I mean, at some point, you got to draw a line and say, hey, like, it's actually better for the animal to be euthanized at this point.
Same with humans.
Same. Whoa.
Whoa, deep. Let's stay on reptiles.
Sorry, don't believe in vegetables.
Murderer.
I don't believe in vegetables, but
this video will get shared real fast all across the internet if we talk about humans being euthanized.
What the fuck are we talking about?
Let's get back.
Sorry. I gotta go. Sorry, guys. Bye.
We're trying to reel this one back in. So jungles, are they the same as coastals or what?
Do Bredli. I feel like we haven't totally jumped into the Bredli.
Oh yeah. So do you still keep Bredli to this day?
Yes.
Awesome.
Also, let me give you points for calling it. Oh wait, never mind.
Bredl's Bredli.
I was about to say I actually like Bredl's better, but I like you for sticking. Some people switch back and forth, and that makes me mad. I like you that you call it Bredli the whole time.
Bredl's.
Bredl's. There's people who call them like Bredli or Bredlies.
Nope.
Like if you have researched anything, most things are the person who discovered it. It's their last name with an I added.
Yeah, which is so funny. But
so when I discover something, it'll just be called KATZ eye.
There you go. I like that. That works.
That's great.
Yes, I still work with Bredli. I guess, as Melissa would call it, shameless plug. I just uploaded a video yesterday on my Bredli ovulating and talk a little bit about that. So I put that up on my YouTube channel yesterday. She ovulated on June 1st, just before I left for my trip. And so I had to film it real fast and then edit the video and upload it. But I kept it like on private for a week so that way I could go add my tags and like properly share it, because my YouTube channel following is still kind of small. So I didn't want to just upload it there.
So everyone go follow him right now.
Yeah, please.
Plug.
At SBK Reptiles on like everything.
Damn.
Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Don't expect a lot more because we have a small YouTube following too. So
it's okay. I'll share it, and then maybe each of us could give each other like 2 followers.
Yeah.
Dude, that'd be sick.
Sorry, I totally got you off track.
You mean there aren't a million people watching us right now?
Oh, sorry to tell you, there's only 17 watching you right now.
But they're engaged.
Thank you guys for being here.
Also, I realized we forgot to tell him that before in our little pre-talk, that anytime you see me not looking at you, it's because I'm looking at the chat that's over here. And we said like
they talk about, if you think we're talking about killing humans and stuff, they're talking about worse stuff most of the time. So,
and so, like,
what are they calling me?
Well,
they know a weird amount about your collection, though. There's another question that I want to ask, but it's too far
but like
out.
Also, anytime I said like Dan said this or someone said this, it's like because it's coming from the chat. Earlier, Brandon Wheeler of Morelia House said like blasphemy about the shit. He said Bredli rough scales. He said blasphemy.
Brandon Wood. That's funny. Yeah, Brandon's a very cool guy. I was watching that podcast that you guys did with him. What was it? Just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that was a fun one. So yeah,
cool
sorry.
What the hell
Carpet Fest was at his house.
Sorry, yeah. So if we bring up the chat ever again, that's what's going on, and that's what I'm halfway doing. But about your Bredls and your trip, and go.
Wait. Okay, so
back into it.
The Bredli. So I have a pair of normals. A genetic stripe female, and you just sold the male. A pair of stonewashed, a het female stonewashed, and a male hypo that we'll see. It's kind of a secret project, but Maybe he sired a clutch with a genetic
Maybe.
stripe female. So maybe we'll see. And so I will for sure have normal babies. Well, I will have a clutch of eggs from my normal female this year. I would assume they would be fertile because I saw the male lock up with the female, but I don't like to count my chickens before, I get them. So it's one step at a time. I will get eggs this year from my bredli. I'll see that once they're laid if they're fertile or not, and then if they are, I would in theory have babies.
In
But
theory,
life happens, and so I don't like to the other reason is if I just say I'm gonna have bredli this year, that sounds kind of cocky, and that's not what I'm about. And life happens. What happens if my incubator takes a dump, or something happens? There's a fluke thing. I mix the vermiculite wrong. Any number of things could happen. That's just the truth. And so, yeah,
And I
to
think
err
you
on the
can
safe
say
side.
that with some species, we're gonna have corns this year.
yeah, we
before
have
we
no
had
problem.
the eggs, I was like, I can promise you we're gonna have corns. But I feel like bredli, or
Python eggs in general.
you gotta kind of err on the side of caution. Oh, I did what I thought was right. I did, I checked all my T's. Shit.
Whoa, dotted all my Z's. All right, let's go.
Dotted all my Z's.
Let her talk.
Yeah, I feel like you can do all that you felt that you were supposed to do and still come up unlucky with bredli.
Right. Yeah, I could see how that would happen, and to not sound cocky, but I would argue, and this for anyone, not just me, if you bred it once, you should be able to do it again. If you're not keeping notes or keeping track of what you did to be successful, you should be. And so in theory, having produced them in the past, I should do it again this year. And again, not trying to sound cocky, just trying to really promote that you should, one, kind of have confidence in yourself, but two, know what you did. It shouldn't be this blind thing of how the heck did I get eggs? I didn't know I had two, a male and a female. I thought I had two boys. Stuff like that,
Let's not talk
that. I get asked that about every day on Instagram. How do I incubate these eggs? They just showed up. I don't know.
Let's not get into that.
You know when people talk about oh, are you a professional snake breeder? This and that is no, you know who the professionals are? The people who didn't even know they had a pair and they got the biggest clutch.
Perfect clutch.
Always,
no slugs. No slugs. You're the Houdinis of
right. And they always are the ones who produce the new morph. It's always somebody who has a small collection, they have two snakes and they were given to them. They didn't even want them, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
Getting back on course, which we're really, really bad at doing, if you haven't noticed. Bredli. What do you want to see together? Meaning, are you going to put G-stripe with stonewash, or G-stripe with hypo, or hypo with stonewash, all that other stuff? Where do you see your project going?
I see it all. I want to see it all, is what I should say. Because
I want to see stonewash G-stripe, because what the fuck happens there?
Right. I think that would be dope if we could get that stonewash pattern all the way head to tail because of the genetic stripe gene. Unfortunately, history has shown us, some genes don't work well together. A friend I was talking to on the phone just yesterday, zebra jag is a really cool combo. I don't think that'll ever get old. Granite jag tends to look really cool, but if you do granite zebra, you can't even tell that it's a granite zebra. There's people struggling to figure out, if you made a granite zebra or not. Whereas a super zebra granite looks really badass. Well, you can't get there without making a granite zebra, but you can't tell you made a granite zebra. So to say genetic stripe stonewash, I think it'll be dope, but who knows? It might clash and that would suck, but only time will tell. I really want to see a hypogenetic stripe stonewash. Bredli, that'll be dope.
I think the big thing is to get, because the G-stripe, I feel naturally makes them a little bit duller as far as color goes for whatever reason. I don't know if you agree. You might totally disagree, but
totally 100% agree.
Okay, good. I would love to see hypo in it so we can see a nice, bright genetic stripe bredli.
Yes, would agree with that. Hopefully it does that. If you look at things, I'll keep it to carpet pythons or morelia specifically. A lot of the striped stuff tends to be on the darker scale. Excuse me. Why is that? I couldn't tell you. I'm not a scientist, but I've noted it. I have friends who are trying to make like tiger caramels. And if you got a really light caramel, the tiger striping was really crappy. If you got a really nice striped animal, the caramel was not that great. It was a caramel, but it wasn't that bright. Whereas axanthic tigers are a really clean, cool, hot combo. But the axanthic gene would be on the darker scale, you know, and the tiger gene as well. So we'll see what happens in mixing hypo with genetic stripe. But I would agree, genetic stripe is a darker bredli.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why there's genetic stripes out there, and they're about the same as a regular bredli as far as price wise. And it was like, oh, these are cool, but it's like, yeah, they're clearly a little bit duller. And I just think it's crazy that there's animals that, I mean, like you said with the caramel, it's like the caramel tiger or whatever you're talking about, like actually the less good the caramel is, the better it looks. And then it's like you breed it the next generation, and then you're kind of fucked for that next generation. But it's like, I don't know, that's weird just how the genes play with each other.
Right. Just some stuff goes really well together and some stuff doesn't. And I don't know, I guess you'd have to be a scientist to understand why.
Yeah. We need to get Travis Feynman. We need to ask him how that works.
We have so many Travis Feynman questions. We could have a whole like segment on the podcast, like, oh, we asked Travis this, like the Travis question of the week.
To, like bing him in or something.
Bing him in? What
yeah,
the
like
fuck
press
does
a little
bing
button
him
and
in
there he
mean?
is. Bing him in.
Like phone a friend?
Like beam him in. You
Beam,
know?
not Bing.
Well, that too.
You said Bing.
I said
What
Bing
the
the first
fuck is
time, but I
Bing?
changed it to Beam.
Okay, I like phone a friend. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We end up like texting him after, or he'll text us like after he's watched the podcast. I'm like, here you go. Here's my answer to this. And
like, just tell me how I'm wrong, and I'll try to do better.
So you guys are in that circle. You guys got the connection.
We got the smart people.
We
smart
can't
person.
hang in it, but
Smart person.
We can't hang in it.
We can't have back and forth conversations with him. It's more. It's a very one-sided. Like,
just
him
tell me why I'm wrong.
Are you guys just like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we had the podcast with him, that was my expression the whole time. Or like I don't know what you're talking about right now. Like one of those.
You
Yeah.
need to get smarter.
Exactly.
So what? Obviously we talked about bredli, so we got to talk about coastals. You have no pure coastals. What do you have that's not pure? What kind of weird IJ stuff do you have with coastals?
I have a granite jag female. She bred for the first time for me this year. Her baby's just hatched the other day.
Did you artificial on those?
I did artificial because I was out of town for those.
Okay.
So that's a granite jag. I paired her with an axanthic male. So I have jags and siblings that are double head axanthic granite. So they're normals.
At least they're het for axanthic, so there's some distinction. Or
they're het for both axanthic and granite. So I have those, and then I have a super zebra jag female that somebody like once asked, like, oh, how could you guarantee that it's also jag? And I was like, all right, I'll breed it and prove it just for you. Sure enough, it proved out. Part of that is like buying from a reputable breeder.
Down and
yeah. I talked about that. I said it in my video. I was like, well, it does that when it should just kind of cruise around.
So I've heard of the issues of like the pigtail and stuff on super zebras. Have you seen that? Or what are the chances of getting a pigtailed or, a less than desirable animal from a super zebra? Do you know?
I mean, it depends on what one would consider less than. If you breed zebra to zebra, I would say assume it's like jag. You're going to have neuro animals. You're going to get kinked tails. How bad will that be? Well, there are some people who have had kinks that go just about all the way up to the vent. And so if it's a male, you're screwed because, like, what are you going to do? If it's a female, there are some things that you could have done, like take it to a vet to have the vet cut off the end, in simple terms. You could also have, I hatched a animal that had a curl at the very tip of the tail, and then not very far off of that, it was like, I don't know, 180-degree angle. And so it just kind of looked weird, but it was technically two different kinks. And so I just, had it, had to take it in and have it removed, and it was just fine. You obviously want to do that when it's younger versus when it's older. And there was no issues with that.
So do you think that it's more of a problem in your males rather than your females, since the king should go up where the hemipenes would be?
I think it would be, it would be more of a problem if it, went as high as like the hemipenes, because then they would be, twisted up as well, or maybe kinked or altered in some form.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was a female, you could probably go, remove it like just about right up to the vent.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, that would need, vet consultation, but I would assume that you could probably remove it right up to the vent just about.
So how does that work? Does it get cut off and cauterized, or is it just like he put bacitracin on it or put an ointment on it? What do you do?
No, I'm sure just in a sterile environment, he just like snipped it, whether it been with probably even nail clippers or like a scalpel. And then he just said, keep it on paper towel, keep it clean. And the first day, it looked like a bloodbath. Like you would think, like, how did this, like, what? How is the snake still alive? It just looks awful. And the next day, there's not as much blood. And so I was changing, obviously, the whole tub that it was in. I didn't want dry blood in there to get, start growing bacteria, stuff like that. So, I changed it. And then after that, I was changing the paper towel probably about twice a day because it wasn't rubbing all over the tub anymore.
And how long does it take something to heal up like that?
So I don't remember if I had that done before or after this first shed. I think it was after the first shed, and that's how I decided to do it.
But this thing was a straight bait.
Yeah, I produced it, and I'm pretty sure I waited for the first shed. The reason I waited is because some, even though their tail's kinked, it'll come off and it won't be a problem, or you could gently pick it off. There are some that are so kinked that it'll stay on there, and long term it'll get infected because that new growth is happening inside, and it's, that rubber band effect, just like a regular tail if you left shed skin on. Wow. And so now thinking about it, it was probably after the first shed, and I saw that there was issues, took it in, had it removed, and then it started eating. And after technically its second shed, it was, just a little nub that was barely noticeable. And now you can't even really tell. You have to look very closely.
Mm-hmm. So now, obviously, you must have a zebra to a zebra to pair up, or is there other things in play there as well? As far as, obviously, there may be granite in play.
So I don't work with the granite zebra stuff. I did zebra to zebra this year and didn't hit on any supers.
How many eggs did you have?
I think I had like 16, and I think like 7 went bad. So that was quite a bit. That's probably the most I've ever had go bad. And there are talks of what would be the super zebras end up, dying off
Because
during development.
that's 50% almost. So that would make
Right.
100%, sense.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so I'm always big on, if stuff goes bad, especially something like that where I've hatched perfectly healthy clutches before, and that was quite a bit to lose. The previous owner of that pair told me, expect quite a bit to go off. This pairing every time, quite a bit die off.
Wow.
And I was like, nah, like that just sounds crazy. Sure enough, it happened. But I still will like take responsibility. Like I did something wrong. Maybe I mixed the vermiculite right or wrong, excuse me, too dry or too wet. That's just kind of how I am. So no super zebras that I will be producing this year. And then my other zebra female I bred to my profile male. And so ideally I'll make some really bright zebras this year because that male throws nothing but like A1 babies. And I've bred him to like 4 different females now, and he has yet to let me down.
Wow. So
I was gonna say I'm thinking of even breeding him like to an IJ just to see what would happen, like something that extreme.
How dare you?
Yeah, I know. My IJs, not my IJs.
So I guess backtrack a little because I think you have more things than I originally thought. How big is your collection altogether?
I don't know. I don't keep count because I always say like if you keep count, like then you're a hoarder. And so I produce around I think 130 babies a year. And it's just morelia, so it's not that much. I don't know. I have every gene except for caramel and hypo and the axanthic line of holstels. But yeah, I have zebras, super zebras, granites. I have jags, combinations of those, and stonewash and hypo, and I don't know, quite a few. But my collection is still a lot smaller than some of these other guys.
Yeah. So what do you do as a day job, and how do you balance snakes and that?
So I don't sleep well. I work for LA County. So me not sleeping well, like having insomnia, it just works because I clean snakes late at night, and then my neighbors think I'm crazy because like they probably think I'm a tweaker or something, a fat tweaker somehow. Like why is he cleaning and dumping stuff in the trash can at like 2, 3 in the morning?
Yeah.
But I always say I think not sleeping well has helped me because I'm really on my snakes. Snakes are nocturnal, and I'm constantly checking on them throughout the night. I check on them before I go to work. When I get home from work, sometimes I'll be able to come home for like my lunch break, check on them then, check on them before I go to bed or try to go to bed, and then, middle of the night stuff. And so I almost always witness every single one of my breeding females ovulate. I pretty much always catch a lock between, the pair I'm pairing up, and almost always catch the female laying eggs. But I'm checking on them a lot. There's a lot of people who have been breeding longer than me and have yet to see their female ovulate or lay eggs. So
Yeah.
it's helped me in that sense.
Benefits to not sleeping.
Yeah. That's it. Otherwise, yeah, I could use more sleep.
Yeah, I mean, that's wild, but I mean, it makes so much sense as far as, I mean, for me, it would be like you probably get bit a lot more often too. Cause it's like I go into my carpets during the day and you're good. If you go in at night, or the green trees, especially, you're pretty fucked. Or you're like,
but that's like green trees. I don't know. The carpets, like I always say, like right around a year and a half or the time they're eating small rats, they calm down quite a bit. I'll have to make a YouTube video about how I pick up my snakes. They're almost always ready to go. And it's not that they're mean. They're just saying, leave me alone. I'm afraid of you. I'm smaller than you. That's all it really comes down to. They're not biting and wrapping you. It's not a food response. They're biting and letting go and biting you 10 more times before you can pull away. And so I put my palm out and I cover their head and then pick up their entire body and then just move slow with them. And maybe once or twice they'll like strike at the air because, you know, they got touched on their side and they just struck, you know, out of fear. But for the most part, I don't get tagged, luckily. And that's just kind of partially using a hook for some stuff. And then other stuff like just don't touch it.
Yeah. There's some snakes where it's like he never gets used to me. Like my jungle never gets used to me.
Never gonna happen.
He is just the worst, but he's the best also. But I did make a YouTube video on how to pick up your carpet python or your bitey animal, and he bit me during the thing.
Another shameless plug.
Oh yeah, sorry. sorry. But you kind of hinted on it throughout the thing and talking about the rotation of cages and stuff. Do you keep in tubs or in cages? And then also, how exactly do you go about like what you're talking about, the rotations much earlier?
So I do both. I do a combination. So my most recent cage addition was a vision rack. They're boa tubs, the ones that are just like the biggest one they make. And I absolutely do not like it and do not advise anyone getting it. The reason being is it's just such a huge tub that you have to pull out, and it takes up so much space, like pulling it out, balancing the snake in there, the water bowl in there, and any hide caves or branches that you have in there. And then having, you know, space behind you, because most of us, if you don't have a specific reptile room or something like that, you have other stuff behind you. But if you do, I'm trying to cram as many reptiles as I can into a small area. So I got more cages behind me, stuff like that. And so these tubs are difficult to take out, to truly clean. And I'm talking about truly clean, disinfect, bleach, soak, stuff like that, versus just kind of pulling out paper and maybe using a paper towel and wiping it down. And so that's a pain in the butt. Whereas actual cages that I also have, like some of the 4 and 5 footer melamine cages that I use, I could spray inside the cage and wipe it down, and it's, you know, easy peasy. I'm not pulling this giant thing out to clean it. So I like both. I like to use tubs and small hatchling tubs for my babies, and then just grow them up and move them. In terms of how I decide when I'm going to rotate through things, I don't know. It would be probably like just before breeding season, just after breeding season. So anywhere from twice a year to 3 times a year, probably tops, like once every 4 months. And even though I know what my collection consists of, I'm treating everything, and this is what I would personally advise. Like from one snake to the next, one of them is sick with something. Just because you've had them for years doesn't mean you should just be rotating cages like if they're both healthy. That's how, if you happen to get something, it's going to spread very fast and wipe out your entire collection. So I disinfect everything really well, like if it's in quarantine, and then I do the cage switch.
That is something that I forgot to ask you very specifically. When the IJs come in, are you giving them antibiotics, and how long are you quarantining, and what are you doing to make sure that they're good to go?
So to keep costs down, and in talking to the people who are getting them from me, it's not people who are buying their first carpet python, stuff like that. It's all people who are experienced, no proper quarantine, stuff like that. Even though they know it, I make in my posts, you can look on my page, treat these as if they're wild caught animals, treat them like if they're sick, quarantine them, and you're going to do all the tests. I'm keeping costs low. Sometimes, depending on who it is or what the particular deal pertains to, some stuff I'm feeding once, and if it eats, it's getting sent out to, you know, its designated home, and that's how we're keeping the cost so low. Other stuff is I'm getting it and then shipping it to you, and same thing. So some of the stuff has, like my wild caught ones or farmed ones that I've tested, all of the farmed ones so far have tested clean. but just because they have tested clean doesn't mean you shouldn't assume. Just before breeding, I have them tested again because I've heard of people working with bull and I that at 3 years of age showed problems, and sure enough, they tested dirty for something. And so the farmed babies have tested clean, and wild caught babies wild caught animals as of recently have tested positive for hookworms. And so you would just do the proper treatment for that. But it's something that I would say anything that comes into my collection, I treat with Frontline. And so I have that video. I don't know if you guys have seen it. And that takes care of external parasites. Internal, you have to test for them. So you don't know until you test for it.
Okay, so you're not one of those guys, you just hit it with Flagyl and then you're good. But I mean, at least you're not, selling to pet, you're not at your local reptile show selling them to pet owners, really.
Correct. My argument for the Flagyl thing, I used to be one of those guys when I first got into it and not knowing any better, not doing research, respiratory infection, just hit it with Batril, and you weigh the snake, you do the measurements, blah, 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 and this should fix it. Except that sometimes there are underlying issues that we don't know about that maybe Batril would be the fix for them, and you just made it resistant to Batril, and you made it stronger. And before you know it, we're going to run out of antibiotics. That's what's happening with humans right now, is they no longer want to just give you antibiotics to fix your problem. They want to do culture and sensitivity. And so that's what I would advise for reptiles, is don't do the shotgun treatment. It's going to be more detrimental in the long run.
And I can imagine medicine in snakes is going a lot slower on the antibiotic front than with humans. So that seems like something you should worry about.
Right.
And I mean, I haven't had many snakes come back well from Batril when I've had it. Luckily, for the last 2 years, we haven't had anyone. But I mean, most of the snakes that I've treated have been kind of like, I don't know how to say it right, but like tampered with, since like they were never fully healthy animals. But that's just me, I guess. But
yeah, Batril could be an interesting one. I don't know if anyone really has a positive story for Batril because they need to retreat 2 or 3 years later, and it's like, is it the same problem or is it a new problem? And so I don't know. It could be an interesting one. I have a love-hate relationship with Batril for that reason.
And I mean, I've certainly seen like the site necrosis and, the brown spots and stuff from injecting them with it and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's definitely something that you don't just do as a precaution. It should be probably more thought out.
Yeah. I guess I'm kind of spoiled. My local vet, I mean, he's not super local. I make a drive. It's like a 40-minute drive. And that's if there's no traffic. With traffic, oh my God. It's terrible.
Is there such thing as no traffic where you are?
Right. Yeah, that is true. His name is Dr. Greek. He's in Yorba Linda. And so he kept reptiles before he became a vet. So he's not just this DVM that will happen to see your reptile. He's somebody who kept reptiles and happened to become a DVM. So I'm spoiled in that sense because I'm constantly saying, go see a vet, go see a vet. And then people tell me, like, I went and saw a vet and was overcharged and my animal died and this and that. And so there's that area of gray. But I would say just because you had a bad experience with one doesn't mean you should just say all vets for reptiles are bad. Do your research. It may take a while. Find one that maybe doesn't know a lot about animals, but will take your word and read articles or contact other vets and then just write you the prescription. But they did the research to see, oh, you're not lying. You're not trying to just get Batril for yourself. This is something that'll fix the animal. Oh, okay. Let me write you the prescription. And then they learn for the future how to solve a problem. A lot of people are, I guess, afraid to talk to a vet that maybe doesn't know and throw that out there. Hey, check out this. Hey, contact this vet for a consult. Stuff like that. The worst that will happen is your vet say no.
Yeah, I think
it's lit.
Sorry. I tried to make it brighter, and I
think
failed.
that's like understated as far as you really got to ask, at least the way I went about it is ask people who have large collections, who have the snakes that you keep, and who do you go and trust to as a vet? Otherwise, it's like, honestly, the amount of people who are certified to take care of reptiles and don't know shit about reptiles is almost scary. Like,
Agreed. It's and to take it like one step further, it's kind of like when I talk to my friends in the zoo who work at different zoos, and they're like, well, this is how we have to keep this animal because the higher ups say, but truthfully, this is how we should keep the animal. And it's just a political game when it comes down to it. And it kind of sucks.
That's so, disappointing because you wanna say those people are on the top of their game as far as what they're keeping in their husbandry, but it's just, I don't know. But so what are you getting into their closing? What?
Oh,
nothing. What were you gonna ask?
No, I wasn't gonna ask. It sounded like you were saying you were about to ask another question, and we're past time.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Getting into our closing here, like, what do you envision as far as what are your hopes for this season and the future for SBK Reptiles?
The project I'm most excited for was actually a F1 animal that I paired with a farmed hatched animal. Both are IJs. Both are, I guess, one is well documented. The other I had imported, and I'm trying to make a really nice striped IJ. Both of them have striping. One has a thicker lateral stripe, and the other one has more of a pinstripe stripe. And so that's what I'm most excited for. I want to try and, work with that. And I think that'll be one of the coolest projects personally, even though I will have other projects that'll be valued as more. Also want to do like the brighter jungle stuff.
Awesome. So if people, I guess we got to ask the future question. Okay. The future of it. Would you ever want to do this as a full-time job? And then also, where do you see yourself branching out if you are going to branch out from Morelia where you are now?
As a future job, I don't know. It would be cool in one sense, but at the same time, if I was doing this to make a living and like bills were dependent on, if it comes down to personal financing, but let's say I wasn't doing well, who knows? Maybe I'd slash prices, which would hurt the market, hurt someone else's project. Would I have to sell a prized breeder animal that, I didn't want to? Stuff like that all pop into my head. It's all things that I think about. And so I would like to just kind of keep it a hobby, grow it maybe some more. But then when it's a hobby, I think it seems more fun. It's not work then. Even though anyone who has a decent sized collection knows how much work goes into it, but it's still fun, picking up that snake poop, picking up the snake, it's fun. In terms of branching out, I don't know, black-headed pythons and womas, but they're still Australian.
Yes, do it.
So I could see myself doing that, but they're still Australian, so.
Yeah, but that's still branching out, and that sucks because you just brought that up, and I was like, you went to Australia, didn't you?
I did.
Oh, damn it.
We could talk about that next time. That was amazing.
Okay, yeah.
Did you find blackheads or womas? Were you in,
Found a black-headed python, yes. Found 2 different locality scrubs and a gelatin jungle carpet python, 2 of them.
Fuck, so that seems like... blackheads are more in the central area of Australia, right?
I couldn't tell you exactly. They're all around. All I could tell you is that we drove many hours throughout Australia. We did a lot of miles. Oh, excuse me. A lot of kilometers. And so we covered a lot of ground in, I think it was like 10 days, 10, 11 days. It might have been 12. But we did a lot of driving, talking about like one of the days we drove, I think, for 8 hours straight.
How didn't you just find a blackhead in the wild and then not get one immediately when you got home?
So I'm very selective. I'm super picky. There are a ton of blackheads available. Most of them are males. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning, anything I get, I have to get a pair of, which drives the price up. And so I kind of want the axanthic blackheads.
Dude, those are nice, and I may be able to hook you up with a guy who's here who may not be nationally known if you were interested, but dude, he has axanthics, but he also has these Swiss line, I guess it would be Westerns.
We pump this guy up on our podcast so
red
often.
and yellow,
often.
and
We want them.
the most beautiful fucking things I've ever seen, and since then I've been like, I gotta
Are you gonna say his name, or are you gonna message that to me? Or
yeah, no, I mean, he doesn't want to be on the podcast, but I think he'd be fine with us saying his name.
He's kind of an older school guy. He's
Split Rock. Yeah, Split Rock Reptiles.
His card's here somewhere, but Split Rock Reptiles. He's in Dallas.
No, he's in Houston. He's in Houston, I believe. Shit, no, I can't find his card. But yeah, Split Rock Reptiles.
But he just has, dude, just wild.
I mean, and the thing is, it's like what we saw was what he brought to the show. So I feel like he probably has even better, like at his house or, in his collection. But like just even at the show, gorgeous.
Right.
So there's the old pump up,
the old
plug.
Right. I'll check them out.
Yeah.
But if anyone wants to get in touch with you for some IJs or crazy zebra things, where can they find you?
Probably best place would be on Facebook. Shoot me a message on Facebook, send me a friend request. Any of those work at SBK Reptiles. Instagram as well, Twitter, or what's the other one? YouTube.
One you're on right now.
Yeah. Like otherwise, I always say feel free to give me a call if you have questions. We could talk there. You can find my number on either of those pages. And I'm always willing to help. So you feel free to ask questions. And if you want something from my collection to add to yours, that would be cool too.
Okay, wait. I'm sorry we said tell it, but our chat, everyone in the chat is like, okay, you'll have to ask this question. And I promise this will be the last one we have. In the chat, they are asking why you are getting out of inland.
And how do they know that you're getting out of inland?
Is that Brandon?
Well, no, not Brandon.
Well, his
Wheeler.
name is
He
Brandon.
is Brandon. He's our secret Brandon.
He's our secret Brandon.
And then Evan Browder, if you know who Evan is. They're
yes.
They're like,
they're
why
colluding
they're asking why you're getting out of inlands.
It's not so much that I'm getting out of them as it is I was just simply making space. I had a couple people that were interested and they didn't end up buying them. And so it looks like they're going to stay. And so I'll just end up breeding them next year. They're really cool snakes. I didn't want to sell them. I was just kind of making space and it wasn't a need. I think I put that in the ad, if they sell, they sell, but don't try and lowball me because it's not like I need money, where you read a post, someone's like, oh, my transmission, died on me. I need a new transmission. So here's this $900 snake for $300. Right. It wasn't anything like that. It was just kind of I could use the more space, but since they're not selling and summer's now, I'll just slam them with food and breed them next year.
Fuck yeah. So he's not getting out of inland. That's the answer.
Let's
they're
change,
up for sale, but
that.
I'm not out.
Those are my favorite coastals if I was ever to get a coastal. And Brisbane's are second after that. But we are going
too loud. Okay.
Jesus Christ.
But thank you for staying past the 2 hours. Well, I guess
welcome.
Technically we started late, so it might actually be just about 2 hours. But yes, thank you so much. I think this is a great podcast, and we loved having you on. Clearly, we want to know about Australia, so we're gonna have you on again.
Yeah, lots of stories to go with that. I promise. It was such an awesome, amazing trip. It was definitely I don't know, one for the books.
And that was one of the things that I don't write things down, but I think before I'm like, we should hit on things, but we got too carried away with human babies and stuff.
Yeah, human babies. Well, thank you guys for having me, and so I look forward to being on again and talking about Australia and other stuff.
Thank you. Also, thanks everyone who watched and commented in the chat, and anyone else who downloads this later. This will be on SoundCloud, iTunes, and anywhere you can find podcasts by tonight-ish, tomorrow morning ish.
Depending on how lazy or how motivated I am.
You know, we're about to get pizza after this, so that may, make the motivation a little bit lower.
Do it for the 17 people.
Well, it ends up being like 100 at the end because the 17 but like at the end of the podcast you realize like the 17 fluctuated in who they were. So like once we get out of this and you go look at YouTube, it'll say like 100-ish. So yeah.
So like people like log on and they're like, oh, Steven, SBK Reptiles, nah, and leave.
Not you specifically. They're more like,
look at these fucking nerds. We're out.
Well, they get the notification. They're like, oh, there's no snakes. Bye. That's really what it is. It's like there's half our followers just want to look at snakes, and that's not what this is about. But sorry,
this is about snakes. It's not,
looking at snakes.
Just looking at our stupid faces.
Yeah, Okay. Shit. Catch us on next week here. This time, this day.
Maybe this time. You never know. Don't call them.
Okay, this day. I can give you that. I can promise you it will be on Monday next week. And Evan just asked who's on next week, and I have vowed to
announce it.
I vowed to not announce it. Yeah, if I announce it, they're gonna drop out. So I'm not announcing anymore. So you just have to wonder and actually come on.
I don't even know who it is. So surprise to both.
Yeah.
of us.
Also, I don't remember who's on next week. So
surprise, it's me again. Just kidding.
Yeah. Just kidding. Australia.
Just kidding, guys. Sorry.
Okay, but yes, thank you everyone for watching.
Brennan asks, "Is Nick Mutton?"
No, he won't fucking answer us. Sorry. That was a little anger. That was anger a little bit. Let me stop. Shit, I'm trying to talk.
We're not ending this.
I'm trying to finish this, but I want to do a quick plug. Thank you for everyone for following us on Instagram and YouTube. And if you don't follow us on Instagram at Port City Pythons, Facebook Port City Pythons, YouTube Port City Pythons.
Do whatever.
The website is portcitypythons.com.
I'm never letting you do intros and outros.
Thank you.
Again.
Goodbye.
Later. Brandon said disaster.